We have been following the previous ones and we are reviewing the previous ones. Let's see the way we arrive in here, the way to work with the fire resources and create them, and how to test the APIs. It is like putting all together so you're ready when the connectathon goes, so you can use fire resources for the operations. Basically, we will review, you have the country node with all the services in the Docker, which includes happy middleware for APS, vaccines, and etc. Then you add another layer, which is the last iterations of the server, including the terminology server, snowstorm. Once you have the last version of Docker, URL mapping changed a little bit in the several versions, but in the last Docker version, it is like fire/fire/ connected on Swagger or slash browser. So Sergio, if you were there and there's something that is different, Sergio Peñafiel, who made this configuration, or you will have a URL for the API Fire, the other for the Swagger with examples on how to use the API, and an API or URL to arrive to the browser. That's basically it. What do we do? What is this now term? And why is it there? As we have seen, it's a server of terminology, which is different from other terminology servers specialized in everything that a Fire has, which is based on SNOMED. But with advanced support for SNOMED, you can do queries on SNOMED content, hierarchical queries, very fast and several times. And that is a little bit of the difference. The API that you have is a standardized Fire, and the way in which you load it in the locker is pre-configured already with the edition in Spanish that is international. You use Snowstorm in a country with a SNOMED license with a different way to load it. It's preloaded, and it depends on the country where you are. One of the advantages of a snowstorm, as any Fire server, you can add content to the server. For this operation, we will show you how we can add the mapping with local concepts, the local value sets, and the local terminology, which refers to the three components of Fire module of terminology that we have been working already in all our code system, value set, and concept map. Code system is a terminology. So the edition is SNOMED is a terminology. And at the same time, you have versions. The international edition, September 2023, is a version of SNOMED code system. LOIC is a code system. Version 2.75 is a code system of SNOMED. ICD-10 is a code system, and the version 2019 is a version of that code system. Terminologies are represented like that, but when you want to have access and operate with the terminology, you do it through value sets. All the terminologies have an implicit or explicit value set that is equal to all the terminologies. So when you operate it, value sets could be all the technology or a subset of it. It could be inside of a SNOMED with the findings in C. I could get respiratory problems and different ways of setting the value sets. In the case of the concept map, is a Fire resources that will expose the link between different technologies. Let's say I have this SNOMED code. What is the CS? What is the local? What is the name? And it will allow me to navigate this, just reviewing what we have seen. The way we use it in the Subtrack, they are used in different times. The critical one is the one in the middle, the concept maps, which is the one that could be assessed in the connectathon. And what you have to do is the data that you have with local clinical story that could be coded to generate a Fire standardized resource. You need to map that to that standardized vocabulary using concept maps. So you can say, I have C, but it asks for SNOMED. Well, then SNOMED. If I have SNOMED and You have CA, it will give CA. Then I map that to CA. I do it with translate, which is an operation then which is done with concept maps. That is the cornerstone and the most important one. Apart from that, we have other operations. Lookout. Lookup is to see if the code system has or not a code. If you want to check in a code system, you can do expand. That is probably the one that you are going to use most. Expand for data entry. If a user is looking for a vaccine, to know the vaccine options, you can use value set expand, so you have all the options. Or if the user has a filter like SAR, you have value set SAR, and it will be all chickenpox vaccines, and it's a parameter. These are the operations you need to handle better. Mapping is to create the implementation when it's mature, is more explicit. If I want to create the IPS LAC in the diagnostic, you have C10. Then if I have that mapping, I could get the one that is requested by the implementation guide. The other implementation could be precise, and it won't say you have a SNOMED of the type of clinical findings. You have a SNOMED of medication. So you have the value sets that are all with concepts of medication to find the correct code in the IPS LAC. The way you define in FHIR the implementation guides using these FHIR terms, and the way I can load the data with same parameters and restrictions, and how to use translate to translate from one code system to the other. The Connectathon is a game of complexity that you implement an API FHIR, and we play with a created mock-up terminology, very small, so you can show how it works. The idea of the technology is that it works, and you achieve that working, you use the standard form, and uh, it is easier when we get the smaller and simple ones. So Raxil defined in clinical cases that will be used. These are the relevant antecedents, the diagnosis, the vaccines. We don't even get to 20, it's 16. Allergies and medication. All the relevant, the procedures that are outside because it's a big slide. These are the 6 subsets of this terminology of examples that are used in connectathons. Then it's a new technology that is so-called Draxel. It's not to use it, it's just an exercise. Then we can do the mapping. So what we have done is creating Excel spreadsheets to eventually be transformed into a file resource. And once they are file resource, that I am able to create an operation like translate, as I said, and then add the information that originally was loaded using an Excel spreadsheet. So Excel as a way of an example of playing with something simple, a Python script that transform that into a standardized resource, and the operation of the system is a standardized resource that could be validated with Connectathon, that is the translation of one system to the other. So how do we see these pages loaded? Well, if you have some obstacle in the translation or conversion, this is a spreadsheet with 6 tabs. Each of them, it's a domain, the domain that will be work. Each of the domains has the first column with code and then the name, code and background or information. This is the personal system. The first is Raxel invented code, like the pivot. And this is the invented text of Raxel. Then you have 6 columns, SNOMED, values ICD, and local, excuse me, ICD and SNOMED. For H, one, which is diabetes, in this invented terminology, then you can map to diabetes mellitus. You have codes that are purpose, but you have the code that you use for diabetes mellitus with local code 1. But if you use um, CA10, it's same thing. That column is preloaded. When I capture this screen, they were invented, but you have the official codes now in this template. So you have the CD10 codes. You use that with the empty code, and CD10 represents what you have in the base locally in your system. If you use a Snowbit, you put the local empty, and the H and I column will represent what you have in your local system. So for personal information, you have either CD10 or Snowmet. If I have this standardized technology, you can use it as local. And then you can create all the mappings of all the contracts. When you have the vaccine, it says CD10. That's the way we put it in the Connectathon, CD11, and where it's allergies, medications, and procedures, you will see some lines as they're not in CD10 or 11, and we use a SNOMED, so you have a SNOMED, but not CDs. It's empty in these three spreadsheets. So you edit. If you want, you can modify the URI. For fire, you identify the things in the CDA. There were OIDs that were long numbers and very unique, and we need to assign that. But now Fire uses URIs to identify things. Each terminology has a URI. You need to embed that in your local terminology. We put xnode.org, inventing a node of X Latin American network .org/terminology. That's what we invented. But you will see there are some few caveats. This is the new one with diabetes E10.9, E10, E11.9, and XM4639 vaccines. Everything is well loaded, and you have your codes in the cases when you have your own codes. We have a message. If we want to authorize the resources in the server, how can we handle that? When we talk about the way we put them, we will tell. This is the way we see them, and these are empty examples. When you don't have C80 codes, it's like this. It's a little small probably for you. I could zoom in this one. That's the way we see them. And CD11. This is what you were working this week. Probably you're looking to how to share. When you run the conversion process, there's a script that based on this Excel generates 39 fire resources. We found some unexpected programs. Some that was designed so it ran when with Mac and Linux, but not Windows. We will update everything that is special. We thought it was operative and transparent. I don't know if it worked. I have talked with Lucia that was not able to finish running that, so you might have some running problems in Windows. If there's still problems, we can fine-tune the script to refine dependencies with files, maybe temporary files or folders, or then you can use any possibility to find it, like the commas, to see how we run it. It's the quotation marks error. They realized it was not moving in Windows with the inverted commas. But when running the conversion from the default version, you have the content of these pages, put them together for local codes, and creates a great local terminology, mixing diagnosis, procedures, medication, whatever you loaded. If you have a base, it sorts, creating four code systems. In SNOMED-CT, you already have it. It creates the ICD-10, which is a fragment. They will have the CDI-10 codes, which is a fragment of it, and CD11 is a fragment as they don't have them. Only the vaccine 8, you can use it as terminology, but it's a fragment of terminology. Then the local system that will put all the local together, generating Rexel, which is used as a reference, but it's not to use it typically. Then it generates 23 value sets. These 23 value sets are from ICD-10 generating one, and then for CD11, and then for the local, it generates one with everything and one per domain. Value sets with vaccines, value sets with medications, so you can use it to load a page or another page, just like Rexel. That's why you sum up 23 value sets and then everyone against the other. If I want to go to CD10 to local or CD11 to local mapping. So all against all of the others, generating 12 concept maps that are reading the tables. The simple way is you load it in a way you understand, generating 39 resources as it is too much to naturally handle them. The URIs that identified what we loaded are the four standardized URIs, three, SNOMED, the first one, then CD10, which is in every place in Fire, then ORI of on 11. It's different from CD10 as it's more modern with the domain of CD11 and URI identifying the MMS of CD11. MMS is a linearization, and one of them is MMS, which is the correct URI to code and generate mortality causes. Then the one that is invented for Connectathon, which is the Connectathon, and then your local terminology is no-x.org/terminology. If not, you can put your own, like argentina.org/terminology, whatever you want. Once you have that, everything is loaded. There was a comment in the groups. What happens if I have the same code in a diagnosis with background or in a vaccine that in diagnosis are local systems that are independent? Let's say I start one is diabetes and vaccine one is for measles. So they cannot be in the same code system. So it's complicating things. So we will update the script. So instead of one code system for local, it will be one code system per domain for the local. We can discuss if the background information or the diagnosed and domain are two. In general, they're the same codes for background and diagnosis, but this is local. You can use different terminology. So we kept that separate. That modification that runs the conversion with a special parameter that is in manual, which is a split CS, split consistent, minus a split consistent. Instead of generating 39 resources as I've shown, it will be 66 resources. Why? Because instead of 5 code systems, it generates 9, as it generates one local for background, one local for diagnosis, one local for vaccine, one for medication, one for procedures. 6 instead of 1. So it's 5 more. In total, 9. Value sets don't change that much as we were doing the value set per domain on the local. So it's pretty much the same, but all against the others is from 12 to 34. As you have 4 that are local and you don't have just one local, you have CD10 to the local of diagnosis, CD to background SNOMED to diagnosis SNOMED allergies. You split the number, so the concept maps are 34. generating 66 file resources, and that's where we appreciate the file package value that put all together. It puts all together and have another question, I think. And it puts together all the resources to put them all together in the file server. When or how much is generated? The file resources. Automatically, the script puts a fixed version that is 2024. So what happens is when it is loaded again, it will replace it. If you have a different version, you will have an accumulation of different versions, and not all the code concept maps are in a version 1, 2, 3, and you accumulate differences. But when we load that again, it will be replaced. If you load without the split a version and then another with the split in the same server, when you put the one with the split, it will delete and put and rewrite, but will be things that will not match because you have no code system for local, and some could generate dupes. It is better to start from scratch or to delete from the search all the index and conditions that start with fire. So we run it clean. But the majority will use the ones without a split, the simple with 39, and if you need to use a split, you will be complicated with 66. But you can't realize until the moment in which you decide the way you describe the parameters of the maps. What you have is the code. Miguel says, well, we have several codes for the one same code, like 9 for COVID, and in the spreadsheet we only have one. The example is the simplest, not just in the exercise. You put whatever you want and COVID once here. And when you do the work in the Connectathon, this is one example of 20 plus the 8 extra of COVID with 50,000 for other things and diseases that we don't use in the Connectathon. So the simple answer is we choose one, and that is the one I use in the Connectathon. The way in which I will connect my systems, I have to use 8 COVID codes. No way different from that. So you need to duplicate and add lines. H21, H22, H23. You continue putting numbers or adding codes, and Rexel code needs to grow, but you keep the local code that you add and you put the same CD10 code. Okay? So, or the same SNOMED code. In the codes that you added, one that is different from CD10 could be represented, but you can represent. The game of Connectathon is to be constrained to a small set of codes. So you can add, you can put them blank if you have no codes for this, and you can add lines. But when you add lines, it means that you increase the H numbers on this side. That is the way to take it to this place, and then you can see how it stays. Hopefully this does not overlap. Instead of H.21, say H1.1 instead of H21. So that will make sure that it's not repeated. Maybe it is in the diagnosis. Maybe it's a correlation. That has happened, and they say I have another type of diabetes, then a line in between H1.1 local code that I have, a new one, same CD10 and same SNOMED. You do that, then it will run. Okay, let's see how we use this and for what are we making all this effort. Your eyes, when I run the split mode, which divides the content, you realize that URIs, instead of being a slash terminology, instead of one, I have 6, like a slash antecedentes, slash diagnosis, slash vacunas, slash allergies, slash medicaciones, slash procedimientos. Background diagnosis, vaccines, allergies, medication, procedures. You have the fire creating terminology. Maybe you can use them and identify them. Once you have that, you are able to use them. Other significant URIs that are for both are the URIs of value set. As I have a URI that is identified code systems, I could have value set URIs. URIs have a value. that they are readable and shareable. If I have my server of technology and we both upload the value set to the server, while uploading the value set, the server will assign an ID automatically according to their policy. Servers could be correlation ID. If I have three value sets and I add a fourth one, it will be the correlation 4. Others have a UID, different policies to generate the ID. So if I have the value set and I want to share this operation with you, this is the expansion of this value set. Why don't you test that in your server? If I use the ID, when you back that up, it expands the ID as it will be different. So URI is a sort of a constant that allow us to refer to the same value set in different servers so we can share value sets and create rules and powers of execution that are shared. Then, when we see the way the value sets generate, the logic of the Python conversion script invent names according to what they include. Like this Raxel slash fire slash value set slash allergies dash local dash PS is a URI that invents the script. So they say for the local code system, this is the value set of allergies. That's why it puts VS for value set. Like allergies VS, when it says nothing, if it says it doesn't say local, it's a snowman. But when you see it's local allergy, it's local. When it's allergies, that's VS is snowman. If you see CIA, then VS is CIA. So that means is for all the CIA is in there, and that is the fragment we use for the demo. CIA 11 is in the code. The 16 we use for vaccines are there. This one, as you see, the name is a snowman. It's not the full snowman, but the full AT snowman codes that we use in the connectathon. But all it means it is not limited to any domain, particularly speaking. So that's a way you will realize and see how the files look. Let me now share the way we see them. We'll we'll do it with this. Yes. Now I am sharing the VS Code, the development. This is Python script, very repetitive. As do this, do that, do this, do that, with functions for the technical operation. But what you see here are all the instructions that you need to make for this. And when you run it, you generate TGC, which is the file that is compacted in the package of fire. When you open that, you will see that TGC is a CID with files and folders with package tracer saying what the content is with all the value sets, and you can see all the index like a value set. Anyone diagnose Raxel value set is the value set that the diagnoses have of the code system of reference of Raxel, or medication local value set is the value set of the medication of the code system locally. That is the domain. And then a technical index that is used for the servers with IDs and some data, and then the values themselves. If you get in here, you'll see each of the value sets, and like allergies, local value set is a value set of the system of the allergies local dot X. Node dash X, you have all the lists here. You can check and you can see what code systems you have separate. Each of them version is always 2024. And when you go to concept map, you see all the concept maps of locals, allergies, local allergies, Rexel, local allergies, Nomad, local information or background, CAE, local medication, Rexel, Rexel to local procedures, Nomad to local background. Everything is based on that Excel. We will go back to the presentation now. Right here.
Entonces ahora lo que podemos ver es empezar a ver cómo utilizar todo esto, ¿no?
Now we see the way we use it. To use it, we load that to snowstorm post. When you check the instructions, they're ready for Mac or Linux, and they suggest a CRUC, which is a command line, what does not run by default in Windows. I think that it's a more advanced command manager with tools that are for developer in Windows. Maybe they have Hulu, but all the traditional operations that are more advanced. If not, Postman. You will see the URL with some tools to make a post to the server to an URL, and that generates importing this in Snowstorm. When you see it in Snowstorm, you post and it shows empty. If there's no error, it does not say a thing, but it's on the Snowstorm, they receive the package with 66 resources, importing value sets, importing concept maps, and a list of what they are doing. It's very fast. Everything is small. Just an example is small. The other thing we said we have is Swagger. Important because it simplifies the explanation of the APIs we use, and this is designed especially for these tutorials of Connectathon. Swagger with operations of code system, value set, and concept map. Well, first, the normal request of code system, value set, and concept map, the normal get, and then a specific like expand the value set, translate the concept map, look have a code in the code system, or the validation of code against a value set. We might not mention that, but you know, right? If I want to see if this medication is in the medication value set of SNOMED, so using the code, then the value set will too. But you have these operations. What is the interesting thing here? That they use the URIs that we just checked to identify the resources. So let's look at some examples and then we see it live and we can check the questions. If I want to look for the first step in connected to where I use the server I have there for input of data, then I say, why not looking for inside of my local allergies set, anything that is started with AMOX, AMOX is what I write in filter. And then here, the majority of the value sets are included in these samples. But if it is not there, you can write it down here and replace the value in the get of Swagger. With these two parameters, which is the URI value set and the filter, you can execute it and understand the results. The interesting thing here is what we spoke, not using the ID, but the URI. What this does is that the query I'm creating works in all the computers, not just in my computer, because it's got my ID that you can't repeat. And when you insert that, you will change the ID. So when we use the URI, that is an expansion inside of that value set with the filter of AMOX, you get amoxicillin. If instead of that, you write another parameter, X, and then enter, nothing. And then I put alert and you will get everything. I could write prop, you have propofol. So that is the endpoint to supplement searches and all that. And the values to be written are there to be chosen. All the values that we had checked inside of that folder that says value set, and these are all the ones that you can use to filter. This, instead of looking at value set of a SNOMED, I could use a SNOMED and it's the same operation. SNOMED, allergy to amoxicillin in English, and SNOMED code and the system for SNOMED. That is the difference. This is the system of the local allergies codes, the LAD. These are two examples of how you can use Swagger to use it, to show it, and obtain the URL that you will integrate in your app. The important thing is what we will validate and certify, which is the use of mapping between code systems. So the three parameters that we request are code system and target system. In a previous version of Swagger, it says sys target, and it was not that exact. It worked because the filter was sort of functional, but it has got uh, it has to say target system. You can generate the URL and change system by target system, and it will run. If not, update it so you can get the last version. Ask how and which one it is, and you will have the correct Swagger, which is the one that says target system. These questions or queries could be independent of which uh, the uh, the server is in the one that is running. So it does not depend on the resources ID. If I have L62 in my allergy codes, that is the system of that code. So I have code 62 and I want to know the representation in SNOMED. So I've chosen a list and I have the URI of SNOMED, the URI of the vocabulary and SNOMED. This is an example where I run the data of my local server with the split. So as I have the split, then it's slash allergies. If not, will be terminology in itself. So I run here, I touch, and I see parameters match. The match means that the equivalent to the one I wrote, which was the L62, is allergy to amoxicillin. And SNOMED 294505008. Instead of L62, if I write L63, which is correlation, is allergy to non-steroids, anti-inflammatory drugs. What was L63? I could even look up. Then you go to Fire, to Swagger, in fact. You have the main components. So what was L63? L63, and you put local code system, test, and it says slash allergies. So I have the version that has everything divided. Okay, but I do not have the local operation. This is the code system, but if I want to look up, I have to write, select local, then here, local. This is not the one I wanted. Let's do it again. I think it is. For this code system, the value will be like that. I want L63 run or execute, and L63 in version 2024 in the allergies code system is the allergies for the definition just explained in the previous section. L62 or L63 from allergy terminology to SNOMED. We run here and the code comes. If I want to obtain this CIE10 for my allergy local codes L21, then I run that and this is diagnosis, it's not allergies, L21. Then I touch and it says K3 is the name in CIE10. I do the operation following the mandatory parameters of each of the operations. For C11, I'm just making it up, okay? But if I have E5 or Y5 that comes from C11 and I want the local code, these are the operations of a Connectathon when I receive a vaccination certificate in C11. I want to put it in the clinical record of the patient, and then the vaccine are empty, but through IPS I could get with a QR that I scan and the IPS will come. And then they check and they said, okay, I will load them. I don't want to ask again if you have the measles vaccine, then it touches on the vaccines that are important, includes them to the electronic clinical history. And the click is fast, but you save that vaccine with a local code, and the vaccine has CDA, CIE11. So you need to know the local code for this vaccine that comes from outside. So you do it with this mapping. With C11, you have the vaccine, you take the local code, you insert that into your system. This is the use case of using the shared IPS or the vaccine certificate that is sure to add the data that you want in that electronic document inside of the system. The previous one is the reverse case. I save allergies or the diagnosis in local codes. I have L21, and when you see the IPS, it will ask the diagnosis in ICD-10, but I have L21. So you map from L21 to C18 or L62 is a snowman. These are the cases. The idea is to play with Swagger so you can see the same. As you had seen, we have tried beautiful examples. Some are examples, some others might not work. You check how you use them. The translate one is the most interesting. Let's say L22, which is a diagnosis, and I have it in the local code system slash diagnostics. And then I want to put it in Snowman. And then it says Snowman 53084003. But I don't want to do it like that. I want to make it CIE10. Execute, and it says K4 is not the valid one. It's just an example, but you see the way it works. With this, what you do is you test, you play. You can modify the value so it is exactly what you want. You change the URI, then you put the URI that you chose. And always here, when it says request URL, you will have the line that is the one that you need to use in the code so you can implement it. If inside of the code, instead of L22, you have a variable, and then you include it to make it dynamically conversion with the local code and normal, but the structure is right there. That is the variable. Source and target are the same. You can manage that. Or, well, they could be variable according to what you do. It depends on the way you program. But that is the way it works. So the objective of this, a little bit of that, is to refresh our minds, to make sure that you all were able to do that. Now, what comes next for you as a philosophy is the objective of this is to show you the ideas so you see how they work. You can take away and continue with your local systems looking for the opportunities. We won't change the way a system works overnight, but sometimes you have renewal of systems and systems that are smaller. It's not a satellite, you can do it a different way. So the idea is that you inspire yourselves so you can think how this could be if we include the standards as a regular thing in the system. This Excel is a game for the Connectathon to get the example. I would use that, but I could use databases. You can use your own databases. The same terminology that you have in Excel is in the table with the database. So Python script should be generated your way. You can inspire in this. You can copy some parts, generating it in the way you want. But if this is similar script, then you need to read in a diagnosis table in your database that needs to generate the file resource with the code system and the value sets that correspond to it and the mapping that corresponds to it. So you read the resources that you have, and based upon that, you generate a fire package, and based on that, you can upload the terminology inside of the snowstorm of production that you have. And then you can start using it in your own system. So that is a bit of what we call the toy problem or proof of concept, again, where we solve problems with all the complexity, but in a smaller dimension. When you need to take it to the reality, it's not more complex than that, but it's a different volume needs to be possible, and in the tables you add codes periodically with a data entry system that makes the procedure codes to grow, the medication and the diagnosis codes to grow. So this conversion needs to be run periodically, and you update things. It's also an increase in the complexity when we talk about managing time, but what is solved in that game is the idea that this representation is to convert into a pure fire representation. When it's just fire pure, you can put it in a standardized service. When it is in the standardized service, you can use the APIs that are standardized for the terminological adaptation. Once it is in that word, it's easier to get a document from someone I don't know with other technologies and to see how they correspond, or it's easier to send the document to another person and not using my own codes and not using but the codes that everyone knows. That is the philosophy of Connectathon. There's no other class of terminology unless we really need, we can create a new one. There's no plan for that. But what we're doing is working in Slack with you, with monitors, and whoever wants, you can send emails. If you require something, we can help you with the project. And maybe we can add something else, but that will depend on the team. Thank you. Do you have questions, concerns? Would you like to see any running example?
En el chat hay una. Aló.
Estamos tranquilos, Carlos, parece. No hay mucha-
We have something in the chat, I think. No, we already answered the one of the chat.
Escuche porque se me apaga el auricular.
Maybe I didn't hear. Did you say, I think, yes, in the chat, it already was answered, yes. Okay, having no more questions, maybe we can call the session adjourned. And we really appreciate Alejandro for these great 3 sessions we had. We have had good sessions, and Alejandro will be for you participants of Connectathon from now to the Connectathon. So we really have an internal work with the monitor team that you work with every week. So we have his support in this path that gets closer and closer. And we are anxious to test this in the event itself. Of course. Okay, then session is finished, Alejandro. Thanks very much. Thank you, all of you. And we will have the session available together with the other 2 previous ones. So have a very good week. Let's see you soon. Bye.
Gracias, buenas
You.
tardes a todos.
Good afternoon.
Gracias.